Hey guys, welcome back to In The Endrows, the podcast where we talk to modders and farmers alike. Today I'm talking to MRG Mapping. I'm really happy to have him with us today. Say hello, MRG.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, so really awesome to have you on the show. You're my third guest, and this is the first mapper I've really talked to and we've really had here. So it's getting exciting. I'm excited for some unique conversations that we're going to have.
Yeah, for sure. And thank you for having me on.
Of course. All right. So as with all my guests, we're going to start from the ground up. First, I'm going to ask you, and I want to kind of get to know, what is your history with farming? What's your history with agriculture?
Yeah. My father, well, I suppose I can go back earlier than that. My grandfather bought a farm with his twin in northeast Iowa, around the Elkader area, just north of Elkader. In fact, the Elkader map that I built is based off of that farm that my grandfather built from the ground up, and with his father. And he and his twin took over the farm, and his twin passed away, and so he took over sole ownership and everything, and worked the land. My whole entire family owned a lot of land around the Elkader, Iowa area. And my grandfather had 4 kids, and my dad was one of those, and they grew up on that farm helping my grandfather out. So many different stories from when they were growing up. And then there were 2 houses on that farm. My aunt ended up marrying my Uncle Rich, who took over that farm after my grandpa. My dad and his brother went off and became a doctor and a lawyer. Just an interesting combination. And my uncle married into the family, and he took over the farm, and he owns it right now. And pretty much my entire life has been visiting my uncle and my aunt and helping them out, doing chores on that farm. I mainly came down during the summers when I wasn't in school, and helped them bale hay for a while. I came down for planting a couple times. I think I only made like 1 or 2 harvest seasons. And yeah, I mean, that farm was like, it's so unique and iconic in my life. Those experiences of being on that farm. There's something about it, like it's like a freedom quality about it. Like you just feel like I could like wake up, finish chores and everything, and then during the afternoon when I was alone, just roam around the farm and do whatever I wanted. And I grew up in a town. I didn't grow up on a farm, and so like having that access to that loneliness, I don't know what you call it, freedom, I guess, was really a highlight of my life, and it really formed who I am today and my love of farming. So I mean, aside from helping rake hay and load bales into the barn, and among a whole bunch of other little tasks that they trusted me with. Yeah. Those other aspects were really important. So yeah, so that's kind of where I come from, and that's how I actually got into mapping. So I wanted to recreate that farm. My grandfather had passed away. I was in law school at University of Wisconsin.
Okay.
And my grandfather had passed away, and that farm really was like characteristically was my grandfather. Like he epitomized that farm and everything.
Yeah.
And I was, I knew I wasn't gonna stay in the Midwest forever. I knew I was going to end up moving away because my job prospects were on the coast.
Sure.
And I needed something to take with me. A piece of that farm to take with me, because I would no longer be near it, so I couldn't visit it. And so I recreated it in the game as best I could, and that that started me on this map making venture.
Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely very personal, and definitely again, it's the continued line across everybody is creating what you know, and making things that you yourself enjoy.
I think that's the same with everyone that starts to mod or starts to map, especially for mappers. I mean, everyone that I've spoken to, I teach a class of mappers, and they're all doing farms that is literally their family's farm. Like
Right.
they're recreating their family's farm. And a lot of these maps you'll probably never see public. Like they just want to keep it to themselves.
Mm-hmm.
It's just something special for themselves to keep. But
Yep.
yeah, I think that's like the primary motivator driver for people who get into this game.
Oh yeah, and the way people play the game. I mean, most people just play the. You can have any farming experience you want in this game, right? But the way you see most people play it is just to recreate the experiences they have and they already know, and it's really funny because that's kind of the opposite of what you think would happen. But I mean, that's how almost everybody ends up doing it.
Right. Yeah. And you'll have those people who've always enjoyed farming, but they don't have really a connection to farming. And so, I mean, some people like to gatekeep a little bit, and they're like, "That's not. You shouldn't be pulling, that, that implement with that small tractor or something like that." But yeah. But like you have the part of the community that's like really passionate about it because farming has been their life, or has had a significant impact on their life at least. And then you have this other part of the community that just wants to learn more about it. So yeah, it's really interesting.
No, it really is. So how did you come across Farming Simulator specifically?
Farming Simulator. So I was in law school in 2015. Was my first year of law school.
Okay.
And I was during that time, I was diagnosed with stage 5 kidney disease, which is the end stage kidney disease. That's kind of like the okay, you need to get a transplant now. Like you can't wait around any longer. And so I'd finished my first semester of law school, and then after that, my doctors were like, "You're gonna have to start preparing for your kidney transplant." And it was a pretty big life moment. Searching for a transplant donor and all, the whole mess behind that situation. And so like I didn't take or I dropped out of my second semester of law school to focus on that. And there was just this lull, where I wasn't doing anything. And I was watching, I think I first started watching Oxygen David. And he was playing on Sandy Bay and Naveswell, and I was like, this is awesome. This is so cool. And I was watching him and really getting into it. And I bought the game or FS15, and I played the heck out of Westbridge Hills. Like I don't think I clocked more hours on any other map because it was my first time playing the game. And I didn't know the mods or anything. So like I literally built that farm from the ground up in terms of equipment and everything. But you can imagine how much of a nightmare that must have been back then with no money mod. So that was a lot of fun. But then I saw LBJ Media, LBJ Modding. I saw him playing on Wind Chaser. And I was like, holy crap. This is finally like an American map that I can, look forward to. And I, regardless of, the history between the drama between the LBG media and the community and other people and leaking on all that stuff, his map Wind Chaser, like just watching those videos inspired me. I was like, oh my God, like I need to find more mods and maps like this to play on. And it's just going to enhance my experience and everything. So like Wind Chaser really got me hooked. It wasn't just, Oxygen David. And that map is really infamous, or has become rather infamous.
Right.
It was always the map that could have been, I feel like. It could have been the greatest map. And so that got me interested. And then I think FS17 is really when I hit my stride with mods. Like that's when I was really really into downloading mods and downloading awful mods along with great mods. I was, everyone goes through that period of time where you're like splurging on mods and you're downloading the bad ones alongside the good ones, and then things aren't working. And but like 17 was like a renaissance for maps for me, at least, like playing on those maps. 17 came out, and I played it for a while, and I think Blue Web came out with County Line pretty early. I played on that, his 17 version of County Line. But then, like, I don't know, it was like there were so many maps coming out for 17 that were great. I mean, you had South Mountain Creamery, You had Mills County. You had the county line conversion from 15. You had Oregon Springs, Autumn Oaks, even the Bedford County, unfinished Bedford County, which is what I'm working on right now. It's Simon Family Farms. I took over that project. Like there are so many good maps coming out for 17, and I was just like addicted after that. Like 15, I played, but 17, I was absolutely addicted to the game because of those maps.
Yeah.
And there's something about like recreating, back to like, Wind Chaser and maps like there's something about recreating that, like, or making the farms not like. I feel like the European style was it's such a different experience from American style maps. And I played a lot of European style maps in 15. And I finally felt like I was playing on American style maps that I could use American equipment on, and it wouldn't feel, I don't know, it feels awkward playing with American equipment on a European map, or seeing like photos of it. It's like, it's so out of place, and it feels weird.
Yeah.
And so like 17, I'm probably going all over the place right now, but like finally having those American style maps, that got me hooked. And then 19, I started modding. And I was really getting into making things for myself and the community. So,
gotcha. So, okay. Yeah, really, really interesting there for sure. Like we've definitely seen a growth in American style mods in equipment and maps from 17. You're absolutely correct there. And there's been there's a whole side of a community just dedicated to recreating the American experience, because farming's farming, but it's not the same style. You can just tell the difference. Like when you drive an American spec tractor down, a small European like cobblestone road,
right?
It just, it's not the same. It doesn't work. It doesn't fit.
Yeah. For as beautiful as those European maps, you're not going to recreate that feel unless you have an American map. So
yeah, absolutely. So no, that's really interesting. What have you done so far? Let us know, like, what's your mapping resume so far in farming?
Sure.
What have you done so far in 19?
Yeah, so I started mapping a year and a half. Well, it's close to 2 years now, but a little over a year and a half ago, I started working on Elkator. I learned a lot throughout that experience, but there's so, you're constantly learning when you're either working on mods, or I'm sure or working on maps. You're always learning something new that's going to help you. But I started working close to 2 years ago on Elkator, and it was a mess. But I think people really liked the look of the map and liked the feel. I felt like for all its shortcomings, Elkator is certainly different than what you typically see, or what you had typically saw. Words. And I think I was the first to start using. I'm not entirely sure about this, but I'm pretty sure I was the first to use bright dust for gravel texture, which is that very classic Northeast Iowa gravel look, which is much brighter instead of that gray gravel that you see on most maps.
It's white limestone almost. Yeah,
right,
it's a light cream limestone. Yeah.
Right, and actually, the gravel texture I use, I need to fix it so it's more of that white limestone. Because right now it's a little too golden. But I think I was the first to really start using that, because I was like, okay, this looks like an Iowan gravel road. And so that's what I think. And like doing the terrain correctly and having the bank barns, on a hillside and everything. I think that's what made Elkator popular, and like made it kind of different from most maps, not all. And then after that, I built Farmersburg. I did this build a map in 1 week challenge, and I built Farmersburg in 1 week, and it was a little bit of a mess after that, but I did get it finished. And then I spent another week and a half fixing all the problems, and released that map with the problems, and I had to come back and fix it and everything. So that was another mess. But Farmersburg, also same look and feel, just north of Elkator. that map ended up being really popular for some reason, and I didn't even think it was very good.
Huh.
But I think people just like that feel of the hillside and the bank barns and using them correctly and stuff like that. So
Mhm.
I finished that map, and then after that, it was kind of a cascade of other maps. It was like Mercer County, which Tyson's done an edit of, a very good edit of.
Mhm.
There was Clark Farms. I did a conversion of Clark Farms. I love the terrain. I did Clark Farms. Not many people know this, but I moved to Washington after Mercer County.
Oh, okay.
Graduated from law school,
Mhm.
moved to Washington. Didn't have like I had my computer with me and everything, but I didn't have a desk.
Sure.
And so I used in Clark Farms, I used a folding chair, a big box to set the screen on, and I used a smaller box on my lap to set my keyboard and my mouse on. And that's how I built Clark Farms or rebuilt that map.
Look at that.
Yeah, and that was a fun experience. And I'd been away from mapping for about a month when I started working on that map, or started getting back into it and working on that map. And so I really wanted to work in Giants Editor. I felt like I needed to keep my hands busy, and so
Yeah.
that was how I did it. I didn't want to wait for a desk, and
Yep.
and so worked on Clark Farms. Then I did a No Creek Farms conversion, which I kind of want to go back and work on. And then Marksville. I worked on Marksville, which was probably up to this point my most detailed map. I really wanted to experiment with how to properly make a map. I don't know how to properly detail an American map, I guess.
Mhm.
And I used a lot of, if you go into that map, you'll see a lot of weeds and a lot of deco foliage and probably overuse of it. But
Sure.
it was fun to do, and I did it all by hand. Like now, I learned how to use the script to do it, but I did all of that by hand, and all
Wow.
the detailing on the barns, the fans, and scripting the curtain on one of the barns and everything.
Mhm.
I kind of wanted to elevate from what I was doing in previous maps in terms of detail.
Yeah, I think
Um,
a lot of modders hit that point where they're doing something, they know what they're doing now, but then they hit a point where they're like, okay, I want to go to the next level, right? I want to
Absolutely.
expand my skill base, and I want to do it better than I've been doing. I want to grow. So,
Right. Absolutely. And add that extra level of detail that takes, your map from just being the same old style to something completely different, and making it feel completely different or more immersive. And then also learning throughout this entire process, learning new ways to do things. So field dimensions. Field
mhm,
dimensions are a pain if you're doing curvy fields.
right.
Um, I don't know if you have any experience with, maybe you do with field dimensions, but basically how it works in Giants Editor is you take a transform group, um, it has 3 points to it, and you're basically creating a square. All
Okay.
right. So if you have curvy fields, you have to put a whole bunch of squares along that curve to make it
Mm,
look like a curve. So field dimensions determine where plants are planted when the computer owns a field,
right.
right? So it brings your map to life.
Mhm,
You can drive throughout a map and not own a field and see corn planted in a field. That's not
mhm.
yours. And not having that, I don't know, is it just changes. It makes the map feel empty, I guess.
Yeah.
So field dimensions, now we have a script for it, and now you can just paint using an info layer, painting along the field edges, and then you run the script and it'll create all those transform groups, all those little boxes. It'll do it all for you, like
Oh,
thousands of boxes. Yeah,
wow.
yeah, and it'll do all that for you, and so you'll have the field dimension and everything, and it'll have plants planted there and everything, and yeah, it's amazing. But you can take that another step further than that. You can take that image, that field dimension image, info layer image, put that into GIMP, and you can just or take your cultivator density.
Mhm.
Talking about, I don't know how much you know about mapping, but
I don't know a lot, to be honest, but I'm listening.
right. Okay, so cultivator density is is your fields.
Yep.
It's basically all the shapes of the fields and everything. You can
Mhm,
take that, you can convert it into a PNG image, and then you
mhm,
can open that in GIMP. You can mess with the colors a little bit so that you can see the fields,
mhm.
and then you can turn all of those fields into a different color that's going to be read by Giants Editor as an info layer.
Yeah.
And so it's going to read all of these fields. So you take that back into, and they're all coded differently, and you take that back into Giants Editor, and then you can save it as an info layer, and then you can run the script from there. So like field dimensions with something that took like hours and hours and hours to do, it takes like 5 minutes now. It's insane.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah, with the stuff that we, I don't know how this conversation started, but like the things that like we can do now is so much easier in terms of mapping.
Yeah, no, that's really cool, and that's kind of how Giant's engine works. Is you take, like, you do the same thing for scratch maps and dirt maps on pieces of equipment. Is that you can paint a black and white image in a 3D modeling software like Blender, and then you can change it to be a red channel or a green channel or a blue channel.
Oh, okay.
In GIMP,
Okay.
and then I think the green is your ambient occlusion, and then the red is your scratch, and the blue is your dirt, or something like that. I probably have the red and the blue mixed up, but it's kind of the same deal. You can take an image, change it to a color channel, and then it'll interpret it as that. So that sounds kind of similar.
That sounds exactly like what I'm talking about. Yeah, for sure. So like, the plowed state versus a cultivated state, it's just a difference in numbers on the red channel.
Okay.
It's like, it's like a difference between 1 and 2, or a different color. So it's reading all of those numbers differently. Giants Editor is.
Cool.
So once you understand that for other map makers out there, once you understand that, GIMP becomes literally the most powerful tool you can use. It's insane.
And if anybody listening isn't quite aware of what GIMP is a free alternative to Photoshop. It's not quite as clean or professional as Photoshop is, but it definitely has a lot of powerful tools, and you can get a lot of plugins for it. So that's what we're referencing when we talk about when we say GIMP. So
right.
No, that's awesome. So what is your favorite thing to like and design your maps around? Like what kind of farming experience do you have in real life? And is that your favorite thing to do in mapping? And if not, what is your favorite sort of thing to make maps around? Like what kind of experiences do you like to design them for?
Right. So the farm on El Cader is an old dairy farm. They do all beef now, but I've always loved the feel of a dairy farm. I mean, I went to University of Wisconsin, and I mean, every other day my girlfriend and I would go and we would just drive around the Wisconsin countryside, especially southwest Wisconsin, which is the Driftless area, which I consider one of the most beautiful areas for farmland, like in the country. If you ever get a chance to be, I don't know where are you from? The Driftless area around there?
I'm from Iowa, but I had driven I had driven through Wisconsin once to go to an interview in Madison.
Okay.
So I've driven through that. I driven through that area, and then I drove back to Iowa through that area. I remember a lot of beautiful hills, a lot of roads that literally cut through hillsides, and you could see all this amazing golden rock on the sides where they had cut through. A lot of pastures, a lot of cornfields similar to Iowa, but a lot of hills and things.
Right. So you probably drove through like Dubuque to go up to Madison.
Probably.
And so like that when you get into the Wisconsin side, it's insanely hilly.
Yeah.
It's just up and down and up and down. So, and for those of you who don't know, the Driftless area is basically like, if I remember correctly, it's an area that like was untouched by the glaciers. So the glaciers, like, it could be the opposite. I'm pretty sure it was untouched by the glaciers. The glaciers like flattened out a lot of ground outside the Driftless area, but the glaciers didn't do much to this area, so it's like kind of preserved, and the hills are just up and down. And so when you visit this area, you'll see so many different like bank barns and small dairy farms in this area, and I just fell in love with it, and that's a primary motivator for how I design my maps. I know some people complain that I do 1x maps too much, but it's kind of like 1x maps are like a snapshot of an area.
Yeah.
They're like 4x maps are different. Like they're much more immersive. There's much more you can pack into it, but you can, sometimes you can lose out on detail. Sometimes, I mean, there's some 4x's that are insanely detailed. So take that with a grain of salt. But 1x's are like like I said, like a snapshot of a small area. And for me, I see all these different farms, and it's usually just like one piece of a road that I really enjoyed when I was driving through it. And that's what I want to take my snapshot map of,
Right.
And so, and it's almost always dairy farms. I do like row crop and stuff like that. I'm getting more into that actually, in terms of map design. But
Mm-hmm.
for anyone who's seen, like Marksville is a perfect example. You can go to Marksville, and that is a snapshot of a Wisconsin, area of Wisconsin that is heavy on dairy. So yeah, that's kind of where my focus is. I like cattle. I like working with cattle.
Mm-hmm.
I think it provides extra dimensions to the game. There's more activity, I feel like, working with cattle than working with crops.
Mm-hmm.
And work. I feel like it's also a great like interim activity. So like you plant your crops and everything, and then you need to focus on cattle.
Yeah.
Uh, baling hay and straw and everything, and then back to harvest and everything. So
Yeah, because you definitely need
yeah,
something to do while your crops are growing, and they
right.
can synergize so well with manure and what you grow, feeding the animals, and
Yeah,
exactly like that's probably the best way to play the game in such a synergistic way. So
yeah,
absolutely.
and I would love to see in the next game more stuff related to animals, not just like new animals, but extra dimensions to the cattle. That's the kind of like what Tyson did on Mercer County.
Mm-hmm.
That would be great to if Giants would add stuff like that, where there's just extra feeding options. There's does the base game even have beef cattle? I don't think. I don't. I've
Um,
played with seasons almost every time, so I don't even remember what the
yeah,
base
me,
game is
me
like
too.
anymore.
Me too. Maybe, but I know that the game has had the same TMR mixture for almost a decade now.
Yeah,
That's
there
like
need to
that's
be.
all it
Yeah,
is, right? Is make TMR, feed it to cows, get milk, take care of manure. Like
right.
that's the entire cycle, and it's been the same way for almost a decade.
Yeah, there need to be different feed options that result in different things, more options would be great, like
Mm,
maybe there's a cheaper option for doing something, it doesn't have to be cattle, but it gives you less quality,
yeah,
or yeah, different functions like that would be really helpful.
it would. They
Uh,
would.
yeah.
Because I grew up around a lot of hog farms, and
Oh,
pig
sure.
farming in the
Okay.
game is pretty boring, and like being able to do more of your own feed mixes and things like that, because especially
Yeah.
that is really lacking any sort of depth. So that'd be cool to see, and I totally agree with you from that same perspective, because I always because a lot of the pig food that I have grew up around and is mixed like by my family and stuff like that is
Oh,
it's
okay.
it's a mixture of it's there's a lot of grain crop farming is big corn and soybean fields, but
Yep.
corn and soybeans are the foundation of pig food. And then
Right.
you buy, vitamins and minerals and other things to
Yep.
mix into it.
Yep.
And it like, and especially, I'll just throw this in here. It's not super relevant, but like corn stalk bales, like maize plus,
Yes.
that kind of feature. That's a that's a critical aspect of corn farming in a lot of ways, and it's
Yep.
totally missing from the base game.
Yep.
And it just so anyway, no, on that aspect
Yeah.
of add extra dimensionality and adding things for sure. I
Yeah,
agree with you there.
I'm kind of worried that Giants is focusing on breadth to capture a wider audience and not
Mm-hmm.
focusing on, you know, they're they're covering too much, they're trying to encompass so much.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm worried the next game they're just gonna, add more crops, add more tractor brands, more hopefully John Deere implements. I would still buy the game if they had John Deere implements, but
Yeah.
they're just like trying to cover as many people as possible, and not like focusing on that depth we were just talking about.
Yep.
I'm really worried but I understand also like their business model. We're asking for so many things, for them to add to the game. But if you think from their perspective, they come out with a game every 2 years. If they added like a bunch of stuff, like what are they going to do for the next game? They're gonna. I feel like
Yep.
they kind of and part of this is like, okay, well maybe they're milking the franchise. Maybe they're just trying to hold off on adding those features because they're going for longevity in terms of their game.
Sure.
So yeah, it's a balancing act for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And then a lot of people like we have to remember this is Timber Simulator too to a lot of people. Like
Yep.
they have to do that side of things also, so it just stretches it even farther because you only have so much depth and width, and you have to balance between
Yeah.
how broad it's, mile wide and inch deep, or
Oh
an
yeah.
inch wide but a mile deep, and you have to just balance that.
And they probably look at their numbers. They look at their
Yep.
numbers and they're like, okay, a lot of people like logging on this game, or a lot of people like a certain style or a certain part aspect of the game, or our majority of their their profits probably from console. So how can they make it more? I don't know. How can they gear the game more towards console players? And
Yep.
yeah, it's a mess.
Yep. Yep. It's not an easy solution for sure, and
Yeah.
modders are definitely how the game has kept hardcore fans and casual fans alike interested. So
Yeah, yeah. I feel
yeah.
like precision farming was a step in the right direction.
Oh yeah, I was
So
really surprised when they came out with that. It kind of showed an interest in deepening that aspect of the game that I didn't know if they would go towards or not. So no, that was
yeah,
really cool to see, and it kind of shows a little bit of promise for the future.
did you play with soil mod in FS15? Because
I don't think so. I don't think I started goofing around. Well, maybe. I don't remember.
yeah,
I think I only had a few mods in 15.
it was kind of like soil. It's the precision farm is kind of like
Mm-hmm.
soil mod. I kind of like soil mod better, but yeah, that like completely changed the game. That was before seasons, and that completely changed the game.
Yeah,
Back then. So I'm happy. I mean, they're a little late to the party, but
sure.
it's certainly a step in the right direction.
Yeah, more base game interaction and
Hmm.
integration, especially with, we're expecting seasons to be that way. I expect it to be in the next
Yeah.
game, but,
Oh, they have an info in Giants Editor 8.2.2. I
mm-hmm.
believe they now have a seasons. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. They have a generate seasons mask option now.
It's
Um,
coming.
Yep. I mean, if they're going to add it into the editing software,
Mm-hmm.
it's a high likelihood that it's going to come in a future game. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, let's talk about future games, but more specifically, when I'm talking to you, I'd be curious about what kind of map making features do you think the next game would need? What kind of stuff do you like to see? What kind of tools do you think we would need in future map making endeavors and
Oh
future
boy.
titles of the game?
In terms of Giants Editor, it makes me facepalm sometimes just how working on Elcator, I was doing all the stuff in Giants Editor. I didn't know any other outside stuff like using GIMP and Paint.net and
Mm-hmm.
other programs to help me, or scripts to help me. And there are so many things that Giants can do to improve the experience of map making, at least.
Yeah.
I think that man, there's so many things. I mean, field dimensions. We talked about field dimensions and how much of an absolute pain it is to do that with transform groups. They should just turn that into an info layer.
Right.
They should turn. I don't know why they took away I mean, they didn't technically take it away, I guess, but navigation meshes for animals. It's basically where animals move around.
Mm-hmm.
The placeable system uses planes. So, again, transform groups, a big square. This is where the animals get to move around, right?
Yep.
But like, what happens when you have a cattle yard or a pasture, that undulates and goes up and down, and cows follow a path and everything? It's very hard to place a whole bunch of planes along a curve, right? It's the
Yeah.
same thing as field dimensions, really.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, what I did, and I don't know, there's probably only a handful of other American map makers that are doing this, but I created an info layer, I added it into my map, and now I paint along those hillsides, and then you can generate a navigation mesh off of that.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, and it's so much easier. Like, I don't know why they switched away from it in this game. I understand the placeable system. I'm glad that I can still use the navigation mesh idea, but it's not entirely clear to people who are just starting out with map making how to do that.
Right.
So like that, field dimensions, fruit density. The fruit density script is incredibly handful. Why have us paint by hand all of these, all of the weeds and the deco foliage when I can just run a script. I can just paint with a big info layer.
Mm-hmm.
So how this, I don't know if you're familiar with root density script, but this is amazing.
Okay.
I'm kind of nerding out here, so
No, it's
I hope
fine.
you forgive me for doing this. So what you can do is you can take an info layer, you can paint down all the areas where you want deco grass, all
Sure.
those weeds and stuff, bushes
Mm-hmm.
even. You can paint down in between fields and everything, and you can be really sloppy with the brush, so you can paint over fields.
Yeah.
And when you run the script, it won't paint as long as you as long as you have a field dimension image or an image telling the script where the fields are. It
Mm-hmm.
will not paint any grass in the fields.
Oh.
It'll paint all the deco foliage in between. So like instead of like going along like very like for hours and hours on end just painting in between fields, painting bushes and stuff like that, you can do all that in like 30 minutes.
Wow. Okay.
I don't understand why they don't have a script for that. Um, they have Giants Editor, but like things like roads, the roads are so much easier now through scripts, through third-party scripts. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, Street Spline Constructor is I don't want to like I'm not trying to brag. I think this is more of a problem than anything, but I'm probably one of the few American mappers who really know Street Spline Constructor through and through that script, and it's all in German, so I had to translate everything. So that's probably an accessibility problem. But um, if this was more accessible to a lot more American mappers, like for sure they'd be using it. But you're
Yeah.
basically like creating an entire road, one piece of a road, instead of like connecting a whole bunch of different pieces around curves and up and down hills and everything, which is the worst, most painful experience. Same as everything else I've talked about.
Yeah.
If I don't know why they don't add something like this,
Mm-hmm.
that just allows you to generate a road. Now, what Giants does is they provide you with Giants Editor, but they do their roads in Blender. They for sure do their roads in Blender. So they like are importing roads into their base game maps and everything. So like it's like there's like an extra level of stuff you need to know in order to make a map,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't provide that part of it, which
Right.
is unfortunate.
The documentation for this version of the game has been lacking compared to previous versions for sure.
Oh God, yeah.
They haven't updated. They use Autodesk Maya, and they keep their Maya exporter updated pretty regularly, but Blender is the free version, and they haven't updated their Blender exporter for 2 years, and the community themselves has had to go through and make a script a Blender exporter that can actually do a lot of the things that Maya can now. But I mean,
Right.
it just kind of goes like their attention is definitely focused elsewhere other than assisting the community as much as they previously had. And what it sounds like is like you're not necessarily looking for more features from the Giants editor. You just want things to be more streamlined, efficient, and
Yeah.
faster. Because it sounds like you can do almost everything you want to do, at least most of the time. But what the real problem is that things that theoretically shouldn't take as long are taking a long time. And that's
Right.
probably what slows down a lot of your map making and creation and such. That's kind of what it sounds
Absolutely.
like to me.
Yeah, it's painful. Like now Elkator took me like months and months and months to do. I can do all of that, in a matter of a couple weeks,
Yeah.
just using scripts.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So, for all the aspiring map makers out there, or people that are thinking about it, or are curious about it, map making is interesting because when you're making an implement or a tractor or a tool or whatever, you're just trying to replicate real life functionality as much as possible. And, there's not a lot of wiggle room there because, real life functions the way, it should. But when you're map making, you have a creative license and you have some creative flexibility as you go about it. And you don't necessarily always create things one to one because for gameplay reasons and for things like that.
Right.
So when you are map making, you sort of have to know a little bit of game design practice and theory into understanding what players want, what players need, and how things are accessible and usable. So what kind of ideas and theories do you have and apply when you're making maps? Like what kind of things do you try to keep in mind when you're designing the gameplay experience?
Right. So the first thing would be like something that I think about a lot is spacing on farm sites. Usually my farmyards are rather tight, and that's how they are in real life. My small my small dairy farms. But I think about is the player going to be able to back a truck into this trigger?
Right.
Into an animal trigger. Are they going to be able to back the water tank to the water trough? How are you going to get into this area? You got to be thinking about how players, because players, for as much as I explain how to work or how to use the maps and show in my YouTube videos, and just do gameplay videos and stuff like that, people just still don't get it. Unfortunately, people, when they like the harvesaurs on Marksville, where you had to fill them with an actual like movable gale blower system. There's still people that struggle with that, and so you need to. Everyone's asking for like very complex additions, and I'm reluctant to do that because I get so many messages of people who don't understand how to use some of the more basic side of things.
Yeah.
And that's not against them. Like
No.
they might be like new to the game. There's so many people who come up to me and be like, I bought the game so I could play your maps. Like, so they're new to it and they don't understand how certain things work. Even people, oh my Lord, this is the worst one. I have had like 20 people come up to me in the past like couple of days, like, where do I put water for the animals? They don't know that the Ritchie cattle tank water trough, it's like yellow and it has two sides to it and it's split and everything. I use a certain cattle or a water trough for my placeables, and they don't know that that's a water trough.
Right.
And I'm like, what? How do you guys not? There's somebody who was playing on Marksville and they complained to me that the gates were yellow. And the gates are Sioux. I tried to make it look like the Sioux brand of gates, or is it Sioux? Yeah. And so like I've seen yellow gates like that. But they complain that it's that it's not red or something like that. I was like, are you serious? So like there's some things that like some things like that you're not gonna satisfy people on. And there are other things gameplay wise that you can focus on that's gonna help. I mean, spacing is such a huge part of it because it is such a pain, like backing an auger up to a bin, because I use a lot of bins that require you to use an auger to fill through the top. I test that up quite a bit in game to make sure that you're gonna have enough space to like take a semi or whatever and dump over the trigger and everything. That can be turnaround points when you're like when you come up to a sell point and you need to turn the truck around to exit the sell point. Like sometimes if at least for American maps, like pulling that trailer around, it's a nightmare for some maps because it's just too cramped. And so making sure spacing is such an underrated part of map making, I feel like, because it could quickly turn an American map into like a European map because of the tightness of some corridors and not being able to fit in certain areas.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, granted, some people play with really disproportionate equipment, and that's another thing that kind of bothers me is people not playing with the. And you can play my maps however you want. I'm not saying you have to play it a certain way, but playing with equipment that's just like not proportional to the operation bugs the heck out of me. So it's like, well, this farm was designed so you could use, old iron and not a big butt on it. So it's like that sort of stuff. Don't worry about that.
Yeah.
But like for map makers out there, like I'm doing a series called Masterpieces in Map Making. I think that's helpful to see like the intricacies that go into a map like South Mountain Creamery, to see what they're doing. I talk about different things that can be problematic and annoying when you see when you go into a map, and maybe the map author hasn't put much focus into this, or they got lazy on something. I get lazy on stuff. So like painting the ground texture, painting gravel and everything, I get extremely picky in terms of like having like nice smooth curves, like actual gravel roads that look nice and smooth and everything, and actually look like a road instead of really lazily painted and look chunky. The textures look chunky and they stair step and stuff like that.
Yep.
I have about 4 people who are helping me convert maps, and they're all painting. They're all doing that painting, and I have like a portfolio of photos of do's and don'ts. I say there's a whole bunch of images of like roads and painted textures on the ground that like look awful. Don't do this. And then I have things that you should do. So yeah, painting, don't get lazy with it. I know it's a painful slog of a process. Don't get lazy with that. Another thing, like, man, I could go on for days. Honestly, I know you probably got to conclude this interview
Sure, no,
soon,
you've got a few minutes. You can keep going.
yeah, I could go on for days. I mean, like things like putting bushes underneath trees to make it appear more like a thicket almost.
Yeah.
So you can't see underneath the trees, and through to the other side. Like, I don't know, for where I'm from, like you can't see through a forest usually,
right,
unless it's a pasture.
Sometimes you see an attempt at like recreating a forest in farming sim, but it's just a bunch of cylindrical trees that just stick straight into the ground, and then you can just see through it, because that's not how forests are. There's tons of undergrowth and brush. And you can't just see through a forest like a bunch of toothpicks stuck into a cake, right? Like, it's not like that.
Yeah, I mean, what I do is I use bushes. I just put down, I paint a whole bunch of bushes underneath that, underneath those trees to obscure the view. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's just you do what you want in terms of map making. Some people like a different look than me. You're not going to have the same style as me, and so that's really great, because like you could like have an entirely new map come out to the community, and you look at it, and I'll look at it and I'll be like, oh, I never thought about using this texture to make it look like this, or thought about like this field texture. Like there's some maps that are coming out that have different field textures than mine. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. Like I want to build a map on this area because the field textures are amazing. At the end of the day, it's like, use real life examples to guide you. And you'll be like, that is the best advice probably that I can give. I could probably shorten this entire video down to like a 1 second saying, like, just use real life examples and you'll be set.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I liked your point there about how this community kind of grows together, because sometimes people think of new things, right? And it's one person tries a new thing and it works really well, and the rest of the community can learn and grow from that. And as you have a bunch of people exploring new ideas and concepts and trying new things and figuring out better ways to do things, we can see that, and we can grow off of each other, and we can grow our collective skill as a whole, and our
absolutely
achieve greater things together.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's my entire goal has been like, I know like the modding community can get after each other's throats for sure, and between modders and the community at large, and I don't know, I've just kind of shifted to this focus of like the last couple of months shifted to this focus of like, I don't want to be a part of any of the drama. I want to be a part of the side of the community that is like is just inventing something new and like sharing stuff and different tips and tricks on how to do something. So that advances the game farther, and it's much better than getting bogged down in the competitive side of it.
Because this community definitely has a knack for being competitive and secretive about certain things, and I understand that to an extent, right? Like if you start a project, you don't want to share it with the world immediately, lest somebody do it before you in a worse quality, but it gets more attention anyway. But it'd be great if we focused more on trying to help each other grow. And if you learn how to do something, not necessarily just keeping it a secret, but you want to share it because it benefits the collective, because you have more people doing a good thing. It provides more of that good thing into the world. Like I recently learned how to do flexible hoses on implements in Blender without Maya.
Oh, okay.
So that when if you fold a piece of equipment that has hydraulic hoses going towards it, the hoses fold and bend with it.
Oh, that's so cool.
And I learned how to do that in Blender recently from weird heavily thick German accent tutorial. And so I'm probably going to make a tutorial video about that soon and just kind of show people how to do it with armatures and skin meshes and that kind of stuff.
Right.
But, I could totally keep that to myself, and I could say, well, if you want to do that, you can talk to me, and maybe we can work something out and I can help you with that. Or I could just make a video that says, hey, look, this is how you do it. And then you provide people with the tools to do it together. So long story short, I'm going on a tangent now. We just more cooperation in the community. Definitely.
Yeah. And there is a side of it that's like, if you, after, I'm certain, like when you make that video, you're going to have a lot of people coming to you asking questions.
Yeah.
And I get just flooded every day. I think I have it's probably 30 to 40 on average at this point, messages on like how to do certain things in map making. And it's so hard for me to I need a secretary or something like that to respond to these messages because they're very complex things. With map making, and I don't have the time every day to teach everybody, and so it's definitely a balance. There's definitely patience required out of people who are especially people who are learning for the first time. A little bit of self-reliance helps, but also sharing those tips with more experienced modders, sharing those tips is definitely helpful.
And if there are more videos out there, there wouldn't have to be so many questions because, people would know about videos and things like that. And I get messages about, 50% of the time it's somebody takes a picture of a piece of an implement and be like, can you make this? And I'll be like, yeah, give me 5 minutes. I'll whip that up for you. No problem.
Oh my God.
But
can you make a map of my farm?
Yep.
What?
Yep. That definitely happens a lot. But then there's the questions about, and I appreciate people reaching out and wanting to learn how to do things, right? Because I've been in that situation time and time again where I don't know how to do something and I have to reach out. And it's just difficult to balance that. So for sure.
So
if a modder doesn't respond to your question for a couple days, or you get a answer that doesn't give you exactly what you wanted, it's probably because, they're kind of busy. They have things to take care of in their personal lives too. And we'd love to sit down and help you make something awesome. But oftentimes, the time we do have that's free, we're using it for our own projects and our own things. And it's easy to be motivated for something that you're passionate about and you care about. But, it's just hard. It's just hard. You got to think about it from their point of view.
Exactly. And I think it does. I think that says something towards why are modders the one who have to teach other people how to mod? Why can't Giants put together an updated handbook to do this stuff? So
I remember. I only started modding for 19, but when I was looking around for resources, I saw the FS17 mod book that came in the files, and I was like, "Whoa! Everybody had this for 17? What the heck are we doing in 19 now?" Because they didn't make anything for that, and some of it is relevant, some of it is applicable. A lot of it isn't from the old handbook and things like that. So I think the communal aspect is amazing. I think this game is built around the communal aspect. But I really think I don't want to be too critical of Giants because I love their game. I mod for their game and everything. Absolutely.
But you guys got to step up because and it shouldn't be you and me shouldn't be the ones teaching how to do a majority of the stuff, the easy stuff. Not the stuff that's third-party stuff, stuff that's all I feel like Giants could make such a good map making tutorial, and they have been lacking. So I put that at their feet for future games.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we're gonna start wrapping up here. Thank you so much for joining me today. I think I'm going to I have not recorded the gameplay for this episode yet, dearie me, before this, because I usually only got to talk to you just now. But what's the map you're going to send me that I'm going to be playing on again?
I can for sure send you Simon Family Farms. I was going to send it to a couple of beta testers. today, so I might as well send it your way, and you can play around on the map all you want.
Sure. So what you're seeing in the background, what you've seen in the background, I keep thinking I should say this before I get to the end of the video, and I should say it at the beginning so people know what they're watching. But, if you're hearing this now, this is Simon Family Farms. This is an early access version of what MRG is working on. So if you're excited about what you've seen here and what you're looking at, you should definitely go follow him and check him out. Really cool. So yeah, so how about you promote yourself a little bit? How about you mention the platforms we can find you on, where we can find what you're doing and what you're working on, and where we can support you and stuff like that?
Sure. So I have my Facebook. That's where a majority of my followers are at, and that's where I typically update people on when maps are going to be released, and what the progress report is. I have a YouTube channel. It's just it should just be MRG, but you can find it by just typing MRG Mapping.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I do live streams on my current projects. Usually, sometimes I'll do stuff in Giants Editor. Sometimes we're just playing around on a map I've made. And that's pretty much it. I mean, I have a Patreon. People support me on there. I'm incredibly thankful for the people who have supported these projects. I'm now able to pay other people, take those donations, create a team, pay people to help work on converting these amazing maps. So I do have a Patreon, but that's you certainly do not have to donate. So
Right.
All that stuff is been really great, and the community that we've built is awesome. So feel free to join in and subscribe to this YouTube channel that you're listening to right now. Make sure you subscribe, and I'm going to go tell all my subscribers to subscribe to it. So get on it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I've definitely got a lot more plans for stuff in the future.
Yeah,
So,
do it.
I just want to.
Great.
I want this to be a sort of glue for the community, something where we can get together and talk and grow and mold each other together. So anyway,
right.
Yeah, definitely go check out MRG. Really awesome. You can find me. I am Roosta. I run Rooster Mods. You can find me on Facebook.com/RoosterMods. That's where I release my stuff. I talk about what I'm doing. Definitely subscribe to this YouTube channel. I don't have a Rooster Mods YouTube channel. I'm trying to figure out, if I make modding tutorials, do I want to make a YouTube channel for all modders to share their tutorials, or do I want to just make my own Facebook, my own YouTube channel for stuff? But anyway,
you should definitely do it, because the modding, the other modding YouTube videos are just so lackluster. So please make YouTube videos on how to mod certain things.
Definitely thinking about doing that. So yeah, subscribe to this channel. Go find me on Rooster Mods. We have In The Endrows has a Facebook page too. Go check that out. But yeah, so that's everything I've got for today. Thank you for joining me. You've been a brilliant guest. I hope
Thank you for having me.
Talk more in the future about, you definitely have more to say about mapping, and we can talk about mapping stuff.
Oh yeah. We could definitely do another show in the future, something like that. That'd be a lot of fun.
Awesome. So yeah, thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you to anybody that watched this far. It's been amazing, and I'll catch you later.